Now this illustration deals with GFCI protection of receptacles in accordance with 210.8A1 through A10 as in Apple. Now this is a very busy illustration, but what the illustration is trying to point out is areas in a dwelling unit area that require GFCI protection. To begin, we tell you in the NEC loop for the lighting outlets that's required in a dwelling, see figure 11-5. But we're dealing with receptacles now, and I would like to review the notes with you. Note 1, there are 10 areas where GFCI protection is required, 10 of them that you have to consider when you're wiring GFCI protection in a dwelling. 2, it says now for AFCI protection, we would need to see page 10-25 in this chapter, and we could pick up rules for AFCI protection. Here we're just dealing with GFCI protection, which usually at about 5 milliamps plus 1 or minus 1, it'll open. But it has to open the circuit if leakage current through a hand tool, say, a grooming tool or something like that. We get a leakage current through it that's 6 milliamp, it opens. But it could open at 4 milliamps or 5 milliamps is what I'm pointing out. And of course, if we read up in the UL White Book, electronic version, now you go online to review that, but just typing in ul.org, you could read a lot about these GFCIs. And if you want to really read in depth on GFCI protection, then look at chapter 13 of NFPA 70B, and then go to the OSHA standard for UL's listing and qualifications, and it would be, I believe, 1910.7, right in that area. Now, notice 3, it says for bathtubs, showers, and laundry areas, that 210.8A9 and A10 now have regulations that you need to review very careful, because there is a change in there that's very important of receptacles that require the GFCI protection. See? The way the bathroom has been revised, that section, is that, you know, if you had the 20 amp number 12 circuit, direct circuit feeding the bathrooms, you could now tap off and maybe feed a little vent fan heaters. Couldn't do that before, but now read it very carefully, because A9 and A10 has really been added in and revised. Now, note 4, single phase 250 volt receptacles are also required to include GFCI protection. So if you had, say, a dryer, for example, and you card and plug connect that dryer, 240 volt single phase, it has to be GFCI. And we even see there's going to be some changes of this GFCI protection in the kitchen. If you had, say, a range, you card and plug connect a 240 volt single phase range, GFCI protection. You have to hardwire this stuff now if you want to get away from the GFCI protection, and then in some cases you can hardwire it due to the specs of the manufacturer. So there's care going to have to be taken on this new rule for single phase 240 volt receptacles. It's new in the 2020 NEC. Now you notice if we start reviewing the requirements, let's go to the right hand side, and we'll have the area 1 listed to the right top hand side of the illustration. And in bathrooms and laundries, 1 GFCI protected receptacle should be required in accordance with the regulations and requirements now listed in 210.A1, 9, and 10. So you have 3 sections of 210.8A when you're dealing with bathroom and laundry type receptacles that are being installed. And then, of course, next, right below it, if you have, say, a lake lot and you have a boat dock, you need at least one GFCI protected receptacle there in accordance with 210.8A8. In that, we kind of call that an area 8 there. But to kind of keep you so I'm not bouncing you around, let's look at now the below the watering boat there. Let's look at that GFCI protected receptacle that's required in the front and backyard. It too has to be GFCI protected in accordance with 210.8 is in Apple 3 and 210.52E that requires the receptacle to be installed. And then, of course, 210.8A deals with dwelling unit GFCI. Now, below it, we pick up a GFCI protected circuit that's in the basement, an unfinished basement that you see there. Then we would need a GFCI protected circuit there. Unfinished or crawl space, same thing, and that's 210.8A4 and A5. But again, in accordance with 210.52G is in gray, and notice those are areas 4 and 5. Now, moving to the left of the unfinished basement, we pick up the area 2. And notice in garage, one GFCI protected receptacle should be required in addition to those supplying other equipment. Be sure you read up on that. Now, that's in accordance to 210.8A2 and 210.52G. But notice the exception. Some of our new guys that haven't been keeping up like they should, all receptacles, 120 volt, 15 and 20 amp now in the garage have to be GFCI protected. There's no exception now for, say, a deep freeze or refrigerator or anything, a washing machine, well, forget the washing machine, but say a garage door opener. All those have to be GFCI protected now out in the garage. You know, it's considered an outlet, falls under these rules. And then, of course, we've talked about the attached or detached garage in accordance with 210.52 G1 and G2 is in gray. And then, of course, the receptacle outside now has to be GFCI protected. But if you had a wet bar and you have a receptacle within 6 foot of that wet bar, it too would have to be GFCI protected. So location of the installation of these receptacles around a wet bar, and you have to be over 6 foot away from it, or it must be GFCI protected. But remember, the wet bar is not the type of sink that you would have like in the kitchen or in the bathroom. So kind of keep that in mind. And then if you wanted to, you can take each one of these by the area. You could start with area 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and going down as you see there. And but the reason I took it in the manner I just went over them with you was so we wouldn't get lost when we're looking at the illustration. We can just, let it flow more in a systematic order to show you where 210.8A1 through A10 is an apple, where these GFCI protection of receptacles is required. In this figure 10-22, as busy it is, shows you everything that you need to know about GFCI protection of receptacles, where they are located in dwelling units in accordance with 210.8A1 through A10.